what's the reason then for anyone to be in monogamy if there's simply just cutting themselves off from all of that growth that you just spoke to and shared?
This is the deep dive with Adam Roa.
For anyone that is interested in exploring, whether it's just sexuality or tantra or even polyamory, like any of these ways of exploring sexuality, just to be open with yourself and meet your triggers and even work through your trauma, it's a huge edge, but it leads to expansion and it leads to an understanding of the depth of yourself, which then you can bring into an intimate relationship, which can definitely heighten the passion, the orgasm energy.
So bringing it back, thank you for sharing all that. So bringing it back to the question, right? The deep dive question here of, is monogamy designed for insecure people? What I've heard you share has been that sexual energy, the movement of sexual energy and the share of sexual energy is in and of itself a very healthy thing and can be incredibly healing and will bring so much to the surface. And that in a container, so even in the container where it's not meant to create necessarily relationships, but just be a safe space to explore and share in sexual energy, if all of that is true, then it would, what's the reason then for anyone to be in monogamy if there's simply just cutting themselves off from all of that growth that you just spoke to and shared as, hey, here's all of this that's available, and it can still be done without creating the long-term relationships with people you're having sex with, and the knowing the triggers and the fears that are associated with that, which I can speak to in a second. But what reason is there for not doing it?
What reason is there to not be in monogamy or to stay in monogamy?
What reason is there to not be exchanging your sexual energy with other people and exploring in that way? Like, what is the reason to be in monogamy if everything that you spoke to is about the growth that's available in the exchange of that energy with different people?
Well, I mean, I really do feel like this is an individual question, right? Because there's people who are monogamous. You may have a different answer than me, right? We're all so completely different.
But it sounds like they're just insecure. That's what we're getting to, the deep dive answer. And it sounds like all of you who are saying, no, I'm actually just, I know that I'm not fully fulfilled because that person can't be everything and all of this stuff, but I don't like the idea of blah, blah, blah. It's because you're insecure. Because Allie McPhee has just shared of all the growth that's available to you if you weren't so insecure.
All right. Well, I'm going to defend the monogamous person now.
Yeah, that's what I'm inviting here is like, what is the reason then to do it if you just outlined all of the growth that's available in not being monogamous? Well, what is available then? Why would someone be monogamous unless it was just to not face off with those fears?
Right. Yeah. So in monogamy, right, like all of this growth that I'm talking about that has to do with sexual exploration and the triggers that might come up. I don't believe that this is the only container, the facet of life we can grow in. There's multiple ways we can grow in life. And we can even bring these concepts into a monogamous container, right? We don't have to explore it with other people or go to retreats. But yeah, I personally do find for myself that in order to understand something, I can't just read it in a book. Like, to have a teacher or a guide or an experience is what helps me grow. And then I can bring that back to the container. Yeah, for somebody who's monogamous, the beauty I would say about being in a monogamous relationship and not, exploring everything that I just said is the ability to create momentum just with one person and to let that be as what's being created in the life in terms of how two people are flowing together. And actually, Adam, I just I can't answer this question.
She can't defend it. She can't defend it. The truth comes out. You're all insecure, you monogamous, fear-based monogamy people. That's the truth that Allie has deep inside of her. She just doesn't want to say it. That's what we found out. Well, let me ask you this question. Do you believe that by opening the container of monogamy in some way to the exchange of sexual energy outside of the two people, do you believe that something is actually sacrificed or lost from the container?
I actually don't really believe in the word sacrifice, period. So I would like to say that I feel like everything can be a win-win situation if we choose for it to be.
Okay, so is there an aspect of, so you talked about in a monogamy, how you build momentum when you're in a monogamous container like that.
Right.
Do you believe, like, momentum being one aspect, do you believe that there is some aspect, we'll call it an opportunity cost, so to speak, whether it's sacrifice but there is something that you are choosing that will leave? There will be some sort of loss of something from the monogamous container when it's opened up in that way.
Do I feel like something could be lost? Again, I feel like this really comes down to choice. I think as we explore other interests, like our beloved may not always be on board with that, right? And so when you're talking about in terms of could something be lost, it could be the way that the two individuals are relating in a specific time, in a specific container together. Like there's a death and rebirth that happens as one person or two people become enlightened with a new possibility of relating. And if one person is on board and the other person's not, what could be lost is the sense of ease. However, like if somebody's desiring to explore beyond what's easy, there's, obviously there's something that's not working there anyways, or else why would somebody want to explore? And I think that's just human nature though. Like we're always wanting to excel and up level and learn beyond where we're at. But I think ultimately, like this has to do with choice, as these new concepts are being explored, as we're being expanded, like choosing to put yourself back into deep intimacy, into communication, into date night with your beloved, so that there's presence there. There is a reestablishment of boundaries and agreements. I feel like the word choice is really important because it could feel like there's something being lost. But then again, I don't believe that anything's sacrificed. I believe that we always have a choice to create win-win situations for each other if we choose that.
Yeah, I think that, sacrifices, but I would use the term opportunity cost, right? Like when you're in a monogamous container, there's something that's created there. And by going outside of the container, there is something gained for sure. Like there is definitely, you spoke to so much of what to be gained from the exploration of sexual energy with different people, and what can be gained from that, from the healing to the growth and the triggers of like, oh, let me exchange energy with someone I'm not even attracted to and see what, and so like there's so much growth there. And the container over here that is in a traditional, just 100% monogamous container, the moment that that's opened up out here, something shifts about this container versus being entirely traditional. So there's an opportunity cost. And I was curious if you perceive that or are aware of that, or if in your mind there even is one, because that would have a huge impact on the belief systems that you're speaking to.
Totally. And it really does. I feel like first starts with the security you have with yourself, and which is like the foundation of the whole question we're asking today. I'm really curious to hear your perspective on this, because I know like I'm speaking from my own perspective. I'm sure there's a wide range of people in different relating ways listening to this podcast, having their own thoughts. So I'm curious to hear from Adam Roa and his deep dive.
Well, part of this for me is, I love being able to utilize this podcast to explore people who are inspiring and the way that they think. And so to hear from you and arrive at this space of being able to identify that, like, for the most part, you see it as the gains that are available and not seeing anything really to be quote unquote lost or sacrificed or opportunity costed out of a monogamous relationship, would be the framework of belief system that would lead someone to have the belief like you do, which is that all you monogamous people are insecure. And so because there's essentially only something to be gained and nothing to be lost from entering into that, right? Like it's just important. My point of the whole podcast is like letting people understand the frameworks of belief. And if you believe that there is only a gain and nothing to be lost, and I don't like to use the word lost, but I can't think of a better one in this. No wonder that would lead to that. So that's what I wanted to the reason why I was asking this, so people listening to this can understand, because I'm going to speak to, I'll see how much of it is from my own perspective, but I do want to kind of give Heaven's advocate, just to give another perspective without necessarily it being my own. I think that let me just speak to the opportunity cost first and foremost. Like, one, I understand and have experienced and also deeply believe in the power, the healing power and the growing power and the magic of sexual energy and the exchange of sexual energy. I remember for me, one of the most just mind-boggling aspects was to be in a relationship with a woman in an open-ish container. I wasn't actually dating, but I was open to what might show up. And we had that agreement, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, around if engaged in sexual activity, you needed to communicate that within 48 hours, but it wasn't something we needed permission or to speak of ahead of time or whatever. And I had this experience where I met a woman who was a tantrika. She taught tantra and was very much in that world. And I'll spare the details of the story, but we ended up connecting and spent one beautiful night together. And I, at several times throughout the night, went, okay, let me check in on if this is progressing, is this worth it? And what I loved was that extra filter, because there was no, I wasn't drinking at the time, but for example, let me just get drunk and do this thing and then not have any consciousness around it. So it was very intentional. And every time there was a progression of where it was headed, it was like, ooh, let me check in. Let me check in. Let me check in. And then after it was done, it was absolutely beautiful. It was it was a wonderful night. And it gave me a deeper appreciation for the woman that I was dating. There was not actually a loss of, oh my God, I want to do this way more often. It was actually, this experience was amazing. And it wasn't this experience. It wasn't this connection. It wasn't this container. And so while I enjoyed it and didn't regret it, it also gave me such appreciation for the person I was dating. And so I do have the experience of, wow, I know that connecting with someone else sexually doesn't have to be a loss of love for the person I'm dating. And that was a world shifter for me. Yeah. Because I think that in monogamy itself, the fear is that if your partner sleeps with someone else, they're going to love you less, or they're going to fall out of love with you. And to have the exact opposite experience was something that just changed the whole paradigm for me. And so that's something that I want to speak to, and speak to the defense of all you monogamy people that Allie's been attacking this whole time.
You're putting words in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.